Brake vans. You just put one at the end of the train, don't you? Let me explain. In the early days of railways, when the railway engineers were still very much making it up as they went along, it wasn't uncommon for couplings between wagons and coaches to break and the engine to proceed along the line, leaving part of the train behind. And that's why in the 1840s the railway companies pinched technology from the tramways and started to use brake vans. That was a van that had some kind of stopping facility in it, a brake, used just in case there was a break in the train. And so for the remainder of the 19th century and into the 20th century, the role and responsibilities of the guard matured with the operating practices of the railways. The guard was in control of the train, he was in charge of the train, and he had in his van various things like detonators and flags and this kind of stuff that allowed him to fulfill that function. But one of his key jobs, particularly in the days of the unfitted freight trains, much as we can see on Yarslow, was to avoid the snatching of the couplings. Couplings could still break if an engine pulled away too fast. If you imagine a 30-40 wagon train, it pulls off too fast. By the time the train gets going and it's doing 4 or 5 miles an hour, and the very last coupling between the last wagon and the brake van suddenly tightens, good chance that one of those couplings could break, apart from seriously injuring the guard. But also along the route where trains went up and down hills, it was important that the couplings were kept tight to avoid that snatching. And the guard's job was a very, very delicate and skillful one, keeping the brakes tight at all times. Now the style of brake vans didn't really change from the 1850s, 60s right through to their demise in about 1968, when it was ruled that fully fitted trains didn't need a brake van, and by the late 70s all service trains had fully fitted vehicles anyway, and so they disappeared mostly from the networks. The standard northeastern double veranda style here, quite common. The LNER come BR style with the 2 verandas and extensions at the end, slightly heavier brake van. The LMS went for double veranda, slightly different, slightly longer vehicle. And of course the Midland version often had only 1 veranda at one end. And then of course the classic Great Western towed. Not forgetting of course that brake vans appeared in coaches. We've already seen that in the coach video, where a coach can include a brake van and somewhere for the guard to travel. So as I said earlier, you simply put the right brake van on the back of the train. Brown brakes like ones for fully fitted trains, anything else for unfitted or partially fitted, and everybody's happy, right? But what's this? This appears to be a brake van in the middle of a train. What's that all about? Oh, well, this is where you need to start to understand what sort of train you're running. We saw earlier that you can put a passenger brake in the middle of a passenger train, and that's okay. So what have we got here? This is a fully fitted milk train. The brake from the engine is fitted right through the train, right through to the brake on the very last coach. So if the coupling were to break or anything were to happen to the train, the brake would come on if that accident occurred to any vehicle in the train, and therefore it's not vitally important that the guard travels right at the end of the train. Now there are some rules. Having a guard's van or a brake van like this right at the front of the train and loads of wagons behind it is probably not right, but you can have what is called tail traffic. The Great Western were big fans of tail traffic. Why should that be? Well, these trains did pick up traffic along their route. Don't forget, it wasn't just the stopping passenger, the famous pickup goods trains that stopped to pick up freight. Even the Class C fast fitted trains stopped to pick up freight along the way. That's another video, I'll come on to that. So it could well be that this train, which started out with the brake coach at the end, has called at a line side siding and picked up this odd bit of tail traffic. It makes it easier to shunt and run the train. Now here's a Yarslow layout classic, the WD with the bolsters train, and you'll note here a brake van at the front of the train. Now there's a couple of likely explanations for this. The first one is that it becomes a fitted vehicle, it's attached to the engine and therefore adds braking power to what is essentially an unfitted train. The other likely explanation is that somewhere along the route this train reverses, and it's so much easier if you have a brake van at either end to reverse the train and run it off in a different direction. The guard simply changes end. The other time that you might see a front brake van is where you're carrying a special or delicate load, in which case a front guard may be used just to keep an eye on the train. Now take a look at this and see what you think. Well, I'm sure you spotted it, a brake van in the middle of the train. Now these are rare but not unknown, but why should that be? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, it could well be that this train is actually two trains that have come together, and clearly brake vans need to be moved around in the same way as wagons and empty wagons, so therefore it could well be that the easiest way of dealing with this combined service is to put the brake van in the middle, just connect the rest of the train on the back. The other option is that this is an empty stock train, and as I said just now, brake vans have to be in the right place at the right time to run on the trains they're allocated to. This might just be an empty stock working. Don't overdo this on your layout. In fact, this is staged. I don't have a train like this on Yarslow. They are rare, but as I say, not completely unknown. So as usual, don't forget to check your area and your era for the correct brake vans and liveries to run. Brake vans rarely wander too far from their home systems. You wouldn't see a toad up in the northeast, so make sure you're running something pertinent to the setting of your layout. I've just given you the basics here. There are always exceptions and weird things. Don't overdo the weird stuff. Keep it nice and simple. Hope that all makes sense. I'll talk to you soon.